Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the IDF webinar, School Meals Programs, Nourishing Future Generations. This webinar is intended to celebrate and raise awareness for International School Meals Day, which is tomorrow. My name is Dr. Mary Harrington. I'm the Senior Nutritionist at the National Dairy Council here in Ireland. I am lucky enough to be part of a wonderful IDF action team on school milk, which has led the organization of this webinar for you today. Before we begin, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. This session is being recorded and the recording will be available for you afterwards. Please keep your microphone muted and your camera switched off. If you have any questions, feel free to type them into the chat box and we'll address them along with the Q&As in the sessions after the presentations. Lastly, if you'd like to follow along more easily, you can enable the transcript option to read the subtitles provided by the application. It's a privilege to begin this webinar by highlighting the incredible work of the International Dairy Federation in the critical area of school meals. IDF is committed to ensure the next generation gets the best start in life in order for them to achieve their full physical, mental, and mental potential. IDF has been contributing to school milk for over 30 years, with surveys, reports, and other resources to assess the contribution of milk and milk products to global nutrition and development. Last year, IDF launched the latest bulletin on the state of milk and milk products in school programs worldwide. This report compiles valuable insights gathered from the IDF survey, along with a scientific review and relevant sources that highlight the nutritional impact of school milk. The findings are crucial as they help shape the future of school feeding initiatives and their long-term impact on child's health and education. I would encourage you to download the report and you can find the link in the chat. I would also like to highlight the IDF School Milk Knowledge Hub, where you can find several resources, including case studies on school milk program implementation from countries and other initiatives. The link to the hub is also in the chat. So now to today's program. We will have 2 presentations followed by a Q&A session. So please share your questions in the chat during the presentations and we will address them afterwards. Our first speaker today is Bent Egberg Mikkelsen, a professor at University of Copenhagen in Sweden and Lund University in Denmark. He has a master's in food science and a PhD in social science. His research is on public food and urban food systems with emphasis on school food. He has developed the Learning and Living Food Lab concept, the Gastronarium, the Alimentarium, Food and Science, the Young Minds Food Lab, Next Generation Food Makers Space, and the Young Food Waste Fighters. Currently, he's the principal investigator for the Alley-Born Spieser study on free school meal programs and the coordinator of the Denmark case study on school food commissioned by the School Meal Coalition. I'm going to hand over to you now, Bent. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to hand over to you to begin your presentation. Thank you.
Thanks so much, and sorry, thanks for having me. And let me share my screen here. All right. Yeah, as I said, first of all, thanks for organizing this. Thanks for inviting me. Just for information, I am at Copenhagen University and I'm at Lund University in Sweden and Denmark, as you can see here in the small map, just for you. If you're not familiar with the finer details of the geography in the greater Copenhagen area, so Lund is on the right side and Copenhagen is on the left side. And what I intend to do here is to take you a 360-degree round tour on speaking about the impacts of school food, because as you know, there's a lot of attention to school meal programs, and impact and evidence is really, really important in the decision-making process. So what I'm going to try to do, and you already mentioned this wonderful work that is done by the School Meal Coalition internationally. I would speak, and since I'm the Danish contact point, I have some very good insight in the results from there. Being in the borderline between Sweden and Denmark, I also have a good insight in what is going on in the Scandinavian context. And by the way, I want to add that for the two countries, Denmark and Sweden, there's a lot of difference between the way food is provided in schools on the two sides of the border. So I'm going to speak a little bit about that, and then I'm going to focus mainly on Denmark. So School Meal Coalition, the Nordic Network, and finally Denmark. And I could add that besides the nice presentation that I got, my research work has been mainly in my career on public food. What are the potentials of public food to drive good public health nutrition, but also sustainable eating and these kind of things. I happen to work for the Council of Europe in a healthy eating at school project. I used to be the chair of the expert committee on school food promotion in the European Union. I was the primary investigator of the first Danish pilot program 15 years ago. I'm going to come back to a little later because now we have the second pilot going on in Denmark. But let's just look at a bit about what are the drivers. Why is it that everybody seems to be, or at least a lot of people are speaking about school meal programs? School meal programs is an answer to a piling up of problems for young people. And I know this is made in the sort of a Northern Europe, in an industrialized world context, in an overconsumption context. I know this is quite different in the global South, but at least if you look at industrialized country, you can just mention four examples. For drivers, up to 20% of young people at school are overweight or obese. Close to 50% of food energy comes from ultra-processed foods. Plus 50% of food-made climate emissions come from meat. 37% of pupils skip lunch once a week. You could probably make a list of 50 different reasons for why should you take action at school. And I could also, this is my favorite the favorite reason. You could list others, but the Heckman principle sort of states the fact that if you invest early in childhood, your payoff, your return of investment would be much greater than if you intervene later in age. The School Meal Coalition often refers to this fact that if you invest $1 in school meal programs, you will get a $9 return later on. So there's a lot of good reasons, and the point is that it's not only about nutrition, it's also about finances, it's about economy, it's about money you will be getting back, because investments in school meal programs obviously cost some money, but you will get a lot of them back. So let's just speculate, just play a small game. Consider you as the Food and Health Minister. Your advisor walks in, and the minister would ask, what are we going to do about this? What are we going to do with all these problems? How are we going to address those problems? And you could make a long list of actions that you can do. Most of them would be rather effective, but they will also be rather unpopular. The thing about school food is that there's not really good reasons to object, to oppose, to not thinking this is a good idea. So that's I think, one of the drivers that everybody, many stakeholders can agree on the fact that this is a good way to intervene. A short list. I don't have the time to go through all of these, but these are some of the recent pieces of evidence that is out there. The International School Meal Coalition, emerging after the UN Food Systems Summit in 21, close to a little over 100 countries around the world, signatories around the world, arguing for the power of school food. You have the OECD, you have the World Bank, you have the EU Commission and the School Food for Change. You have a lot of authoritative bodies, a lot of authoritative reports arguing for the fact that school meal is a good intervention component. You probably already know the actions of the School Meal Coalition. If you don't, then tomorrow there will be a webinar on the progress in the School Meal Coalition. I just invite you to follow this work. So just a few words about the differences, because I speak about school meal programs as one of a kind, or as one approach. And the fact is that there are many different approaches. And one very good example is Denmark and Sweden. In Denmark, you have a kind of a collective, what we call a collective approach. You have all kids, all schools, all the time eating. In Denmark, we have a sort of much more market-driven approach. It would be about some schools, some kids at those schools eating from time to time. And obviously, if you want to create public health nutrition impact, if you want to harvest the nutritional benefits, then the impact would be much more diluted on the right side in a non-collective approach, compared to if you have a collective approach where everybody is eating. And that's the case in Sweden, it's the case in Finland, it's the case in Estonia, Brazil, and other countries that sort of gets much more out of the nutritional benefits. So just to keep in mind that food at school meal programs are not the same all over the world. They are definitely different. The other thing that I want to draw to your attention is the policy impact and the policy potential that is. Many cities around the world, Copenhagen is one example, and around 270 countries around the world are actually doing efforts to streamline, to make the local food systems more sustainable. They're doing many things: planned food strategies, public procurement, food waste mitigation, but school meal programs is what almost any city would do. Sooner or later, they would come across this action and argue, well, we need to do something about eating among young people. So let's speak a little bit about the Danish case, because as I said, 15 years ago, we have a first pilot study investigating should we have some kind of publicly organized school meal program. And just before Christmas, we had the great news coming, an early Christmas present, saying that now we're going to have the second Danish pilot on school meal programs. So basically what it is a 4-year pilot program setting aside around 120 million euros to examine, to investigate what are the impacts of school meal programs in Danish schools. And obviously that's how it should be. The lion's share is for the food, for the young people, and then there is about a little over 1 million euro for evaluation over the next 4 years. That will target about 20,000 kids out of a total of 900,000. And it's expected to be developed over in 200 schools out of 1,500 schools. So it's quite ambitious, and it's a really good opportunity also for researchers to take a closer look at what are the impacts, what are the evidence. Here you can see on the right side one suggestion for how to evaluate it. You have a baseline before you do anything, and then you have a follow-up after 3.5 years. Then you have the opportunity to compare schools with a food program with schools that doesn't have a food program. And just a bit about the nutritional benefits and the impacts. I've been speaking a little bit about what are the impacts, what are the benefits of this, and so far there's been much of an attention on, well, this is all about nutritional benefits, which is true, but it's pretty banal, and it has been investigated in really many intervention studies around the world. So I just want to underline the fact, well, it is really good nutrition and it's nutritional benefits, but it's pretty banal, because what you do when you serve food at school is you have sort of a minimum nutritional requirements compared to what are the alternatives. Let's think about you going to the mini market, buying some ultra-processed foods. You are skipping the lunch. You are not eating anything, compared to what happens when the school takes over and serves all the food. Then you are forced to comply with the nutritional guidelines. So that's pretty banal. And the intervention studies, and I can speak from experience because we have been trying to examine, to review all the intervention studies and try to figure out what are the benefits of those school meal program that is running. And basically what you want to do is that you want to do an intervention, and then you want to measure some impacts. That could be dietary knowledge, but much more important is the dietary index for the food, the dietary quality of the food that is served. And sometimes you will be looking at BMI, which is a little more difficult to measure. But the overall thing, the overall trend is that what you find is that when you make healthy food available for kids, they eat more healthy. This is one example of how you can align, you can systemize your intervention programs and look at the impacts. Now, let me just turn to the fact that because a lot of people have been interested in what are the impacts if you look across all the studies. Here's one example from the World Bank. They've been trying to list on the vertical side, you have all of the benefits, and one of the benefits is obviously the improved diet, the diversity and the quality of the food that you eat. And they rate this as a 3-star level of evidence. So they're quite convinced that this is one of the important benefits. I'm just going to show you one example of how does that look like when you do an intervention study. These are 2 Danish examples for 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago, and basically saying free school meal had a positive impact on the changes in dietary quality. The present study showed that the overall dietary intake of food and nutrient level was improved among children. So this is basically what you find in most studies. And then I'm going to move a little bit further, because my main point that I'm trying to make is to argue, well, school food can do more than just be a nutritional benefit. I'm trying to on the left side, you see a suggestion for a model. On the right side, you see this school food for change that is using a whole school food approach. And basically what it does try to do is to argue that you need to intervene in more than just the meals. So here, in a very simplified model, you can say, well, there's the kitchen, there's the cafeteria, there's the classroom, and the community. And basically, our traditional approach has been to look at only the kitchen and only look at the nutritional quality, what is on the plate. But you need to do more. You need to arrange how kids are eating. You need to make provisions for pedagogical interventions in the classroom, and you need to move outside the school and also consider how can school meal programs be a benefit for the local community, for the local farmers, for the local suppliers of food. So basically what I'm trying to argue is that you need to do more than just looking at the nutritional quality. And one example, I'm going to show you some pictures of a program that we've been running in over the past 4 years called the SESAM program, that is basically trying to intervene in the classroom, that is basically trying to teach kids how can you do vertical farming inside the school, how can you understand a plant-based future, how can you curb, how can you mitigate food waste in the canteen. And these are just some examples of how can you actually move from the kitchen inside the classroom, and how can you start creating a more long-term impact of what you're doing. This is one example that I particularly like, that has been trying to measure what is the sorry about that. What is this kind of active food education? How can that, when you use it in a whole school food context, how will that reflect in the dietary intake, which just simply shows that when you do more, when you also intervene in the classroom, then you will see some dietary benefits. And that brings me to my take-home messages. So based on the sort of the insights, I think that's pretty fair to say, insights from the International School Meal Coalition, based on the insights from the Nordic countries, and also based on the research results we have so far on the Danish case, that here are some recommendations. As I argued, first of all, you need a pedagogical integration, that school food can do more. And the whole school food approach is a really good schedule, really good template for how to approach the task. You need some kind of local community integration, and you will be able to create multiple benefits. And I think the whole point is that if you want to make school meal programs sustainable in the long run, you also need the support of multiple stakeholders. So kids being happy, that's of course important, but you need the teachers, you need the parents, you need the headmasters, you need the local food producers, you need the dinner ladies, you need all the people that is involved in some kind in the school meal programs. You need the support of many people in order for those school meal programs to survive in the long run. And the more of these motivations you can take into account, the better. As is argued, school food needs to go hand in hand with food literacy training. And most importantly, you also need to take the teachers seriously into account, because you can consider school meal programs to be a matter of serving good and healthy food, which is of course is important. But you also need to stage the dinner situation, the lunch situation, and for that to happen, you need the teachers to be on board. You need pupils empowerment, and you need pupils engagement. How can you do that? I mean, 3 examples would be: you could ask pupils, you can take their positions into account, you can do surveys, you can invite them into menu, recipe development workshops. You can ask them to participate in the meal. You can also, we have good experience from that in Denmark, to invite them into the kitchen to perform tasks in the kitchen. And that, I think, is one of the things you need to do if you want to create long-term support for school meal programs. Parents, obviously, teachers' involvement is imperative, and you need to apply this multi-stakeholder approach, reaching out to the local community if you want to be successful. Our experience from Denmark, and I think it's fair to say that in particular the 2 last years has been a really good example of broad alliances, many stakeholders participating in debates, in panels, in writings, in media, consultations. A lot of different kinds of interaction would definitely help you promote your school meal program agenda. And then as I started arguing this international cooperation, we have more than 100 different countries around the world. We have a wonderful research consortium operating there, trying to collect all the evidence. In the Nordic countries, we have the Nordic network. So international cooperation, and I think the initiative you're taking in the IDF is also a good example of that international cooperation is really powerful and is needed if you want to promote this agenda. So without further ado, I'd like to thank you for your attention, and in particular my co-workers as well. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Bent. What a really super interesting presentation. We really appreciate you sharing all that information with us. There's so much we can learn, I think, from your experience in Denmark. Okay, we're now going to move on to our second speaker today. Our second speaker is Ayala Weinman, who is a research scientist for the Global Child Nutrition Foundation and an assistant professor in the Department of Agricultural, Food, and Resource Economics at Michigan State University. She holds a master's and a PhD in agricultural, food, and resource economics, and has been engaged with the Global Child Nutrition Foundation and the Global Survey of School Meal Programs since 2018. Her research relates broadly to food security and agri-food systems transformation in Africa and elsewhere. So welcome, Ayala, and I'll ask you to now share your slides. Thank you.
Thanks very much. So I'll be talking today for a few minutes about our work on school milk programs, specifically in Latin America and the Caribbean. I'm speaking on behalf of a larger author team comprised of Maria, Nicole, Ludmilla, and Arlene, as well as myself. This is based on a project and a paper which was completed last year. So what motivated us to dive into the topic of school milk programs in Latin America and the Caribbean? The region has a long and storied history of school meal programs. I think at least one country, their program is 100 years old. Several countries, it's several decades old. The region has a strong commitment to school meal programs. In addition, in recent decades, the Latin America and Caribbean region has undergone a transformation of its food system with economic development, urbanization, women entering the labor force in greater numbers. There's been a nutrition transition, a shift towards consumption of ultra-processed foods. And this has been accompanied by a rise in overweight and obesity in the region. So the region is experiencing some new challenges, and this presents policymakers with the challenge of identifying policies and interventions that can address both undernutrition, which is still a problem in the region, as well as overnutrition. School meal programs are one such intervention. They can, sorry, I'm just setting my timer so that I don't go over time. School meal programs can introduce children to healthy food and beverage options. They can be a platform for nutrition education, which I think is what we just heard in the last presentation, and therefore hopefully influence the lifelong food choices of children. In addition, in Latin America and the Caribbean, there's a strong desire to include milk in school-based food programs. So this motivated us, and we also noticed that there isn't yet a stock taking of what is going on with school milk programs. So this motivated us to dive into the topic and produce sort of a scoping summary of what is happening. I want to clarify that when I say school milk programs, I'm referring to standalone dairy and milk programs and also school meal programs that incorporate milk and dairy into the meal. So our objectives in this project were twofold. First, just to present a summary of what is happening with school-based food programs in the region more broadly. And then focusing on 7 countries that represent diversity across the region, we aimed to assess how school milk programs have fared as of the year 2023. So we looked into whether these school milk programs are operational, how they work, how they are structured, what are the challenges, and how program policymakers and program implementers have responded to these challenges. Okay, so the first objective was just to present a summary of what's happening with school meal programming in the region. For this, we drew on the global survey of school meal programs implemented by the Global Child Nutrition Foundation. This is a survey that gathers information about school feeding in each country in the world. The survey is presented to country governments who are then invited to appoint a focal point who would be responsible for gathering the information on behalf of their government. This paper is based on data found in the first 2 survey rounds, where we had information for 24 of the 33 countries in the region, holding 87% of the population of the Latin America and Caribbean region. So what did we find? First, this is a bar graph showing the school feeding coverage rate in each region in the world. And this shows that the Latin America and Caribbean region reaches 54% of all school-age children with school feeding programs. And you can see that this is the tallest bar. This is higher than any other region in the world. When we focus in on specifically at the primary school level, which is where many programs are sort of intensely focused, the Latin America and Caribbean region actually reaches 89% of enrolled primary school students with school meals. So that's quite impressive. And it really underscores the deep commitment that this region in particular has to school feeding. This region has a lot to teach other regions of the world about how to do school feeding well. We're able to tabulate or document that in the region, at least 68.4 million children receive some food through their schools. And across programs in the region, 83% of programs report that they include milk or other dairy products as part of the school menu. So again, it underscores the importance of milk and dairy in this region. Our second objective was to do a deep dive into 7 countries to understand what is happening with school milk programs. Toward this end, we conducted key informant interviews in 7 countries. These were semi-structured interviews. They were conducted mostly virtually. In a couple cases, they were conducted in person, mostly in Spanish, in a few cases in Portuguese. In total, we have 18 interviews, including with representatives of government, representatives of the private sector, especially dairy cooperatives and the like, and a few other stakeholders. So I think we could have done better in terms of the number of interviews, but we conducted these interviews and then analyzed them in order to identify big themes. This list of questions shows sort of some of the topics that we tried to cover in the interviews, just to get a sense of what is going on with school milk programs in each country. You know, what do the programs look like? What types of milk or dairy are provided? What are the food safety challenges? Just trying to understand you know, what is happening? And then we pulled out from these interviews some broader themes that we noticed. Okay, very briefly, I'll outline some of our findings. First, across the 7 countries, we found 5 countries that seemed to have active operational school milk programs as of 2023. The 2 poorest countries on this list of 7, Guatemala and Honduras, did not seem to have active operational school milk programs, meaning in one case, it's actually mandated in law that children receive milk at school. In another case, it's the decision of school meal committees at the school level, but children aren't in actuality receiving milk at school on a regular basis. Across these 5 countries, the number of children that receive milk through schools varies a lot. Brazil is obviously a standout, reaching 40 million children with milk and dairy, and then the other programs for somewhat lower numbers. It was common in 4 of the countries for dairy to be sourced within the country to support the school milk program. The Dominican Republic is an exception. They don't really have the domestic dairy industry to support that. In 3 countries, preference in procurement is given to small-scale farmers or family farmers. And I'll talk more about that. That's a very important aspect of some of these programs. There's a variety of types of milk provided, ranging from fresh to powdered milk to UHT. When it comes to the type of milk, the amount of milk fat, whole milk is dominant, much more common than other kinds of milk to be served. A few countries do fortify the milk that is provided to students in schools. And it turns out that all countries, at least sometimes, add flavors or sugars to milk that is provided to children through their schools. So I'll talk a little bit about that in detail. Okay. I'm going to share about 6 key takeaways. I don't have time in this presentation to provide sort of a summary of what we found in each country, but I'm going to share some bigger themes across countries. Okay, first key takeaway. We observed that programs often prioritize and take pride in local milk procurement. Linking the school milk program to supporting to an objective to support the local dairy sector. All countries have a strong desire to provide local milk to school children, including even those countries that aren't currently getting milk to kids in school. We observe a strong desire to do so. In Brazil, all food in the school meal program is sourced domestically, and 30% comes from family farmers. In Guatemala, this is actually 50%. I think in Chile, it's a much smaller percent, but still there's, a specific amount to be sourced from small farmers. Local farmers. And this goes along with the growth in milk production in the region, which has expanded a lot since the year 2000, and also production efficiency, how much each dairy cow is producing. At the same time, we observed that there are trade-offs when a school milk program is used to support a lagging dairy sector. So Guatemala is sort of a case in point where the program itself provides guidance that school level meal committees should, they're advised to try to include dairy as part of the school meal that children eat in school. But they're also provided with a very limited budget. And the reality is that the cost of milk and the low budget means that children, they don't make a decision to bring local milk into the programs generally. This is what we heard and what we gathered in our data collection. Dairy cattle production efficiency in the region is increasing, but it's also lower than the global average. And so these trade-offs should be acknowledged when thinking about the extent to which a school milk program can serve a dual purpose. On one hand, getting milk to children. On the other hand, stimulating agricultural development. It's a complicated balance, and we think that the trade-offs, we sort of conclude that the trade-offs should be given good consideration. Across the 7 countries that we explored in this study, we see clearly that the success of school milk programs is determined by fiscal capacity as well as political will. So the wealthiest country in our set, which is Chile, has a school milk program that operates consistently and effectively and has very strong public support. And on the other hand, the 2 poorest countries in the set do not seem in actuality to have milk provision in schools, at least as of 2023, at least according to the information we gathered, even when it's mandated under the law. And in Honduras, a lack of political will was actually mentioned, specifically as a reason for the lack of implementation of a school milk program. We heard very clearly that program implementers grapple with the taste, texture, and safety of milk. And I just want to sort of interrupt myself to point out that program implementers show a large amount of dedication and creativity in getting milk to children in a good way. So the fact that I'm sort of focusing on some challenges here is not intended to convey that the story is only one of challenges. So in Chile, they tried serving children fully skimmed milk and thinking it would be healthier, but found that the children just don't drink it when it's fully skimmed. In the Dominican Republic, we heard of problems with powdered milk that can be non-compliant with food standards, and water that is used to produce milk from powdered milk can sometimes be unsafe, which presents a food safety hazard to children. And so these various challenges are salient across the countries that we looked at in this study. And it's a challenge to balance the priorities of healthiness, food safety, costs, longevity, and the extent to which children choose to consume the milk when it's available to them. We also heard about tension between concerns over child obesity and a need to ensure the milk is accepted. So across the region, the rate of overweight and obesity in children and adolescents has tripled since over the past 30 years. So this is a very large concern in this region. It's also going to be a concern in all regions in the world in the coming decades, if not already. At the same time, notice that fully skimmed milk is not on the school menu in any country. And many countries, at least sometimes, sweeten or flavor the milk that is provided to children. For example, in Colombia, we heard some complaints about being served strawberry flavored milk without variation. So the extent to which milk served in school may drive increased sugar consumption is something that really merits attention. And this balance is, it needs to be sorted out. Last takeaway before I conclude, dairy supply chains are complex, and this presents a challenge in countries with limited infrastructure. So we certainly heard that fresh milk is preferred compared to UHT and compared to powdered milk. But still, for example, whenever countries need to import milk, it tends to be the powdered variety that is imported, that crosses international borders. There are concerns about the longevity of the product and the feasibility of its transport. And in the Dominican Republic, we actually heard that schools are divided into 3 categories. Urban schools receive fresh milk. They have electricity to keep it chilled. Most other schools receive UHT milk in high quality packaging, but remote schools in hot climates receive powdered milk. Just facing logistical realities of what's possible and what can be transported, etc. I just want to conclude by noting that we certainly observed that program implementers strive earnestly and creatively to balance priorities, to find solutions. They continue to do so. It's very impressive. They're very dedicated to getting milk to children in schools. So I want to offer a thank you to the program implementers who are doing this work, and also to you for listening to this presentation.
Thank you so much for that, Ayala. Very interesting to see the challenges in other countries in school milk programs. Okay, so now we're going to take some time for Q&A. If you have some questions, please put them into the chat function right now. I've already seen that we've had a few questions, and thank you, Bent, for answering some of those already. Just have another question here right now, or it's more of a comment about powdered milk is recombined in many places into fluid milk, so it's not necessarily given in school as milk powder, which milk powder is extremely important in the region to complement local production. And you would agree with that, Ayala?
Yep.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions here for both of you. Bent, you really discussed the long-term process that you went through in Denmark there, and I'd be interested to hear what would be the most important take-home messages that you would have for people around this whole policy process in Denmark.
My my clear impression, my insight is that sort of a broad outlook and time is important. Time reaching out to across borders between. I mean, there's researchers like me, there's NGOs, there's companies, there's local municipalities. So my strong impression is that one of the success factors we can speak about in Denmark is creating alliances. I know it's banal to say, but you cannot do this alone. You need to create alliances. I think one important insight is also the active engagement of companies and trade associations. I mean, associations representing somebody. The dairy association could be one, the food association could be another one, but and also private foundations. So I think again, if many different stakeholders can join forces, and for them to join forces is also about opportunities. There needs to be public debate, and you cannot keep all things to yourself. You need to engage. You need to compromise. I think that's one of the secrets from Denmark.
Do you have any special secrets for strategies to actually engage people?
Well, I mean, it's about many things. It's about creating platforms. In Denmark, we have an association called School Food for All, and I think also it's fair to say that the Danish Dairy Association has been involved in many different. The Dietetic Association has been involved. So providing platforms, let's say providing what do I know, LinkedIn groups or groups where you can talk, is one important tool. Creating web pages could be another one, because it's very much about local stakeholders needing access to evidence, to information. And I think there's a huge flow of evidence now that needs to be communicated out to local stakeholders, to headmasters, to teachers, to local school food operators. So it's many things: web pages, web services, social media channels, and public spaces like we have in summertime in the northern countries. You have these kind of people's democracy meetings where you discuss everything, and where school food and food items and food issues is one important topic. So it's about it's about, I think, combining many different channels of communication.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I'm going to ask you one more question that I see in the chat here, and then I'll come to you, Ayala. I see a question for you also. The question is, what is the attitude towards milk in the new pilot in Denmark? Copenhagen has stopped serving milk previously. Any special instructions about milk in the pilot?
Well, I've been arguing that if you want a balanced diet, it's about many different food sources, and I've been arguing that these providers of commodities and different food products, they need to unite and create a common platform to be considered as serious providers of food for the school meal programs. I don't have any particular position on that. I can see that in some municipalities there's a move towards thinking about more plant-based strategy, plant-based alternatives. That is mainly a matter of less red meat and more plant foods. I know I don't have any particular insights in the milk and dairy agenda. Sorry.
Okay, thank you for that. So I have a question here for you, Ayala, which is, what are the conditions to ensure fresh milk is safe for children?
I'm not going to give a great answer to this question. Just I know that countries need to have a cold chain infrastructure in order to be able to provide fresh milk to children in schools. The schools themselves need stable electricity in order to keep it chilled. And there are other safety best practices that I don't know the answer to what those practices are necessarily, but I did hear that the requirements are, as you would expect, they're sometimes a burden for farmers. But of course, they're very important to maintain food safety. So I hope that answers your question, at least partly.
Okay. Okay, so maybe just on that, you did talk about the importance of the local dairy sector support. How can school milk programs be more inclusive of the small and medium-sized producers or the processors in procurement and things like that? What's your ideas for that?
What we saw from this scoping exercise was what I would call tension. I don't know if that word sort of resonates, but obviously school milk programs, they want to reach the most children they can. So they want to keep costs down in order to operate efficiently and also increase their coverage. At the same time, very understandably, they want to maintain good food safety. And what those two priorities together ultimately do is, in some cases, it excludes smaller farmers and smaller processors from being able to supply the school milk program because the standards are high and it's hard for smaller actors to therefore meet those standards, whereas large companies are better placed to do so. And so to make sure that a school milk program is not excluding smaller actors in its procurement, I think that special attention needs to be given to giving support to smaller actors to meet the standards. So not just identifying food safety as one of multiple priorities, but really thinking about how that is experienced by the farmers as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you for that. Okay, I don't see any other questions coming into our chat. Might just give it a second. Ayala, you did talk about as well the challenges around it. Do you think that there's further research, like is there specific further research that needs to be done that can overcome some of those for the program implementers?
Yeah, I mean, there are multiple topics that are worthy of further research. One that I would highlight is the relationship between school milk programs and agricultural development. I think that governments and policy designers would really benefit from more solid information about how school milk programs can be used deftly and effectively to support the local ag sector without relying on assumptions, but rather drawing on evidence.
Yeah, I guess that comes back to what Bent is talking about. It's all around the evaluation of impact and how do we do that and demonstrate it and show it to the stakeholders to bring them on board. Okay. I just see another comment in the chat here about UHT milk is good food safety alternative when cooling chains are not reliable. This question, which country in Latin America have the best school milk program and which country is poised to be helped to have a school program?
Speaking only of the 7 countries that we investigated in this study, I would say Chile is, one of multiple, but really a star that is a good example of a very well-functioning program. And in terms of countries that need help, I think those in Central America need fiscal support and technical support to revive their milk programs. They had been previously in place and no longer, and I think they could definitely use help.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Okay, I think we're going to close off our Q&A sessions there. I would really like to thank our excellent speakers today, Ayala and Bent. That was, they were really great presentations. Before concluding the webinar, Before concluding the webinar, I would just like to briefly mention some news about the IDF. Apart from the publications mentioned during the presentation today, IDF publishes a variety of documents on diverse topics in relation to the entire dairy chain. So I would encourage you to visit our IDF publication webpage for more information on this. I am also very pleased to announce that the annual IDF Nutrition and Health Symposium will be held online on the 20th of May. So we will have more details about registration and the program. They'll appear on the dedicated webpage once we have confirmed them. And the link to the webpage is also going to appear in the chat. And finally, the annual IDF World Dairy Summit will be hosted in Chile this year. The link to follow the updates on registration and program is in the chat. This event is a unique opportunity for the dairy sector leaders, experts, and enthusiasts to gather, share knowledge, and shape the future of the dairy sector. The program will include talks on a diverse range of topics about the dairy sector, including a session dedicated to school meals programs. So we hope to see you there. And with that, I will conclude the webinar saying many thanks again to our speakers and to all of you for attending the webinar today. Thank you and goodbye.